to do with this podcast is to pick up on some of the ideas and themes and thoughts which people have been talking about in a barbershop, and then bring it back into here and talk about it some more. Right. We were talking on Friday about black men crying, and as Lungani says, he went all in many different directions, but one of the directions which was sort of underpinning it all was mental health. And I just thought, with yourself, and we wanted you here because in that position you are working at SACHMA, service director there. I'm very interested in SACHMA and its 40 years, and why do we still need SACHMA 40 years on?
That's a really good question. So shall I tell you a bit about me and then get into that? So as you say, I've been at SACHMA. I started in this role in December 2019. Well, the role has changed. So it started off as a kind of project coordinator and now is chief executive, and we're recruiting a deputy chief executive, and the organisation has grown massively in that time. We've really been blessed, and we've really developed some really good partnerships. Why do we still need SACHMA? I think the reason I would say that we still need organisations like SACHMA is that when we started in 1988, black men were 6 times more likely to be diagnosed with a mental illness and to be sectioned under the Mental Health Act, 6 times more likely. And it's taken until 2021 for us to be 5 times more likely. And if you think that level of progression in that length of time, there are so many questions. What have we all been doing? And that's not just a criticism of the state or the NHS or whatever. What have organisations like ours been doing in that space of time that it's taken over 30 years to move 1 percentage point? And I guess we still need organisations like SACHMA because the pandemic has thrown up a whole load of issues around mental health, particularly for younger men, younger black men. I get approached regularly by people saying, we've heard about Man Talk. Is there something we can do for younger people? And the reality is that the system isn't yet agile enough to take account of the needs of a very, very diverse country, which the United Kingdom is. It was really interesting. I heard something on Radio 4 the other day that they were having a conversation about why is Britain so involved in so many areas of the world when our power as a nation is not what it was. And it all goes back to empire. And all the power that European nations had all over the world. And it feels now that they are reaping the whirlwind because there's an expectation all over the world. You were here. You took all our resources. You grew your country, your empire, and you doled out this kind of largesse about citizenship and all the rest of it, which as we know from Windrush is a movable feast. But that impact has then left them with responsibilities far above the big economies like China and like the USA and increasingly India.
Well, it makes me, as you talk there, it makes me think about, I don't know for you, Lungani, but for me, when I was growing up back in the 60s and 70s in Britain, where relatives of mine in Jamaica would say things about, is it true that black men in England, they go mad? And at the time I used to be quite sort of upset about it. Why would they say that? As a young man, I'm thinking, well, no, that's not the case. And yet, that was the case.
Yes.
It was.
It was the case.
Yes.
And there we were, growing up, 60s, 70s and 80s Britain, and actually, within your own families, with yourself as well, you were experiencing all sorts of difficulties, which, the state, the system, the society in which we lived in, as you say, David, they're about, essentially a racialized society, a society where racism was endemic there, that, just trying to manage it, just trying to survive it, took its toll.
I think you're right there, Donald. But I also think that at that time and still today, there are some ways in the way which we present as black people, as black men in particular, where the assumption was made that we were dangerous, we were bad, we had to be controlled, we couldn't be spoken to. I mean, when we were starting the organisation, the notion of black people, particularly black men, benefiting from the talking therapies, we were never offered the talking therapies. And yet, the counselling service that SACHMA has, we have offered counselling to men, to women, to young people, even young people who are having issues with their gender and issues around are they male or female, all the issues that are touching every community, where I think now we're a little bit better acknowledging that yes, we are going to have these issues in our community. I think historically it was just that we were big and bad and mad. And I remember my late brother Michael, when we were at school, Michael was not the kind of child who would go, would plough the furrow that the school wanted him to plough. He was always an entrepreneur. He'd always got an answer for everything. I remember my first good, I think I got cane, was Michael caused it because he was determined to put the school's tuck shop out of business. So the school had a tuck shop, and Michael, there was a mini market at the bottom of our road, Jackson's mini market. So Michael would go and buy the 6-pack of Kit Kat and the 6-pack of Crunch and sell them. So his job was to go out and drum up the trade. My job was to sit in the classroom with a desk, and as the people come in to buy, I lift the desk. It was like a drug deal. We were found out very quickly, and obviously we were undercutting the school, and so Michael. They tried to say that Michael was educationally subnormal. You have an education background. You'll remember that terminology. But they didn't take account for Muriel, his mother, who was having none of that. And so we ended up moving from Aberdale Middle School to Carton Hall Middle School, where we both actually thrived. And then we went to Aberdale Grange, which no longer exists, and thrived there. Michael became a youth worker. He always retained his entrepreneurial bent. So he ran dances, and he had a wine bar and stuff like that. But
he was also part of the first people to start with the Backyard.
Yes, he was the first one to have a radio show on Radio Sheffield called Backyard, and there was him and Andrew Walker and a couple of others who played music on a Sunday night. I remember those old days when you used to have your tape. I used to try and tape the songs. Stop talking! I'm trying to record this.
The one good tune on the radio at the time.
But it was something like 6:30 or something like that on a Sunday evening, and we'd all be there with our systems taping it, so we could have any cassettes to play in the car.
You mentioned there's something about being caned at school, because we were talking about that on Friday as well. That was in conversation about essentially back in the day when you got caned at school, and when you got home, you might get a beating as well.
Absolutely.
But in that conversation, it was that sense of, when we're talking about getting beaten, about, if you got a beating, you couldn't cry, because someone your mum or dad might say, I don't know, what you cry for? We'll give you something to cry for. But it did there was a lot of conversation about that, wasn't there?
But there were two sides to that as well, wasn't there? Because I remember, I'm not going to cry. You think, yeah, man. And they keep going. And I remember my mum, they both were, they were a formidable duo. And Muriel took care of business herself. She didn't wait. I remember her saying it was either Michael or Bernal or me, you think, I'll fight you like a man.
The English friends were saying they need to be on the TV about wait till your dad comes home. Well, no, we didn't have to wait for my dad to come home. No. Mum was badder than my dad.
Me, I had to wait until my dad got home.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to, and I think my mom was slightly on the softer side. She's still like a soft. I never had her raise her voice. You know what I'm saying?
Really?
But the thing is, I think the whole idea of wait till your dad comes home and now you're getting a beating without context. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, because I was saying to the guys that I think he relished that whole thing of beating us. Because I saw him smile at some point when he was teaching it.
But when we were talking Friday, I mean, we laughed and and then tears were rolling down.
Yeah.
But we also were saying about how that fed into a sort of like not crying, be it at home or be it at school. Crying was the ultimate humiliation.
That's it.
And
that's it.
It began, is that a part of a process of, socialization where you begin to say to yourself, I don't cry. I'm a man.
Cry, yeah.
I don't cry. And I don't emote in that particular way.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I think I think we were wired that way because some of us didn't really understand crying, without the stimulus of a beating. But that whole thing that, you can cry because there's so much that's pent up in us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? To a point that you're thinking, maybe this thing is okay for me. It's good for me, to at least, because we have a myriad of ways of expressing, from joy to sadness to whatever you, but it seems like out of this wide spectrum of emotions, we are only told not to express that one.
Yeah.
That has the ability to at least relax us. Because you remember after a good beating, like
I forgot that bit. But
the double breathing.
There were two cruel things about beatings when we were growing up. There was the after, but the before. Go and fetch the belt.
Yeah.
No,
come on, man.
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that? I tried. I think I remember a time trying to break everything that my father used to beat us. To no avail.
No.
My father will find something to beat you with. I remember him chasing my brother with it's akin to a club, It's like
I know when I was growing up, we used to get, my mum used to have privet edge. I used to take and just bend it round and just whip it. We wore shorts those days. Around the legs, etc. But when people were, your older people were being sent for, your older brothers and sisters were being sent for, and they were arriving. So essentially that Windrush generation, which in a sense have a double bind, or many binds, but one of the double binds would be they get left back in the Caribbean, from not with their parents, even though they may have very, very close relationships with grandparents and aunties. They come to Britain, get sent for. They arrive to families, siblings they don't know. In some cases, a dad they don't know, and they didn't get beaten like Jamaican style. Because that's what I saw. I saw it within my own family. I saw it on the street. People, those who were sent for. It seemed to be quite harder than what we had it.
I think you said something earlier, Lungani, about doesn't matter where you came from, because we were very blessed as a family. So my dad came first. Now, my dad had 2 daughters before he met my mum. And so we knew their names, but we didn't know them. Even now, I don't know them. I finally met them in 2022 at my dad's funeral. I'd had conversations with one of them on the telephone, but I don't know them. But I remember growing up, and when my mum was telling us off about something about us fighting as siblings, she would often say, I don't understand why you guys can't get on. Same mother, same father. And I didn't understand what she meant. And for years, I didn't understand what she meant. And then I got it that, not all the children would be the same mother and the same father, but we're all thrown together in the way that you're just describing, Donald. But my parents, coming from St. Kitts, my dad came first, and then they'd got 2 children together, and they came with my eldest brother and my eldest sister. When my mum came, they all came together. And then the 4 of us were born here in in the UK, so we never had that kind of having that socialization of somebody coming from. I saw it with friends.
Yeah.
But we never had that. And I think the thing about crying, I think there's a context for it. So in places of worship, so my church is a Pentecostal church. We are loud, we are out there. But often when I really feel the presence of God, I don't always shout. Often it's just tears. And oftentimes people will come and say, "Oh, I don't know what happened, but God will take care." Nothing's happened. I'm just enjoying the presence of the Lord. And that's that thing about us being socialised, that if men are crying, it's got to be something wrong.
It's got to be something wrong.
I mean, on Friday,
Yeah,
I think it was Andrew and Kevin were saying about, no, it wasn't that, it was Paul said this. He said about the idea of mirroring and permission. Which I think it alludes to that idea you just said about context, that there are some contexts, it seems, which you are given permission. When we were going around, everyone said, I cried at a funeral, I cried, my mum died, my dad died. These are, in a sense, legitimate places for men to cry, where you could weep or whatever. But when we went further, or the conversation went further into other times when you cried, that became a bit more, people were having to think a bit more, was it this time, was it that time? And it did come away with this feeling that actually it wasn't a common experience, it wasn't a frequent experience, even when internally you might feel like you want to cry, you feel that sadness, you feel something in you which is really just, you're not right, you feel not good, and actually it's a sadness which we all feel from time to time, but we don't know how to let it go. But it was really good when we got back to it, because someone said, but when you have cried, how you feel afterwards.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's been let out.
You do, and I think that I remember I hear exactly what I agree with everything you're saying. Certain contexts give you permission, and I don't necessarily know that we know how to handle it when we haven't got that permission, or what to do when it hits you. And as you were talking there, it just reminded me of the first lockdown. So during the first lockdown, my eldest daughter, she lived in Manchester at the time, and her marriage was ended, and she came back to Sheffield. And she said, "Dad, can I come and stay for a while?" Her and the two eldest grandchildren. And she came back to Sheffield. I think it was on either the 15th or the 19th of March. And then lockdown happened very soon after. And it was strange because we hadn't lived together for years. She's in her 30s, got her own family. But actually, it went so well. It went really well. And I remember one night, you're at arm's length, aren't you, to your children and their relationships? And I knew that things weren't great, but I didn't realise, I think, how bad they were. And I didn't think I realised how they impacted on the grandchildren. And I remember one night, myself and my grandson were stood on the stairs, and he was just talking. There was no light on. And it was I can feel it now. And he said to me, "Granddad, can I call you Dad?" It just broke me. And so we're on the stairs, and I didn't realise, and I realised, but he's crying as well. And I'm crying, and then I thought he'd had enough, but he'd actually gone into the bathroom to get a tissue for me and a tissue for it. I was just a mess. Even now, talking about it, I'm struggling.
That's really, that's beautiful, that is, because that was also another thing we talked about, which is, we talked about being a child and how our parents brought us up, and the circumstances and the situation which they found themselves in and we found ourselves in. And then we flipped it around and said, well, what about ourselves as dads, as parents?
Yes.
And there was slight bemoaning the fact that when we were growing up, many of us didn't hear our parents say, "I love you." But then we flipped it around and said, okay, then what about when do you say it to your children?
Yes.
You know, I love you. And do you say it particularly to your son if you've got a son?
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
And that I have to say, it's not something I've said.
But-
and I feel terrible for that. And I've got to say, and yet it feels odd to be saying, not odd. Can I even say that? It's not three words I say that easily, it seems.
But this is the thing. I think sometimes because we didn't really have any reference point pertaining to hearing that. I mean, it's like we are. I don't know. I mean, I can't talk about our white brothers and sisters in terms of how they do family. But I know from my own experiences, like those were words which we never really had. Because it's until I think I was having a conversation with my wife yesterday about the fact that I think for many of us, they didn't know. Because remember, they are a generation who will go to work, they will work and they will provide and give you, a roof over your heads and all that kind of stuff. So, and because they were not a generation that understood that words didn't mean much. The only time you heard the black man speak was at church when he's preaching. And sometimes, you know what I'm saying? But I think we never had it because sometimes they felt there was no need to.
Yeah, I never doubted that my parents loved me, never ever. But I think that they probably demonstrated love rather than verbalized love.
Absolutely.
And no doubt whatsoever, they were hard workers. The two of them were hard workers. They kept us, when I look back, they shielded us from so many things. And I think that kind of, the demonstrating rather than verbalizing. I can remember coming home from school and people that we knew from church who were there, and they were women there, and you think, oh, sister so-and-so, she looks a bit different, and the kids were there, and it wasn't for us. It was just more people to play with. It was we were very much an open house, and in those days, now you've got a ring to say you're coming.
Yes.
Making
a point.
Yeah, everybody used to turn up.
And then looking back now, I recognise that those women were fleeing domestic abuse, and my parents' home was a safe haven. Now it can't be that my mom just decided to do this on her own. My dad had to have been in on it and in an agreement with it. I think as we got older, and as they got older, they found it easier to say, I love you. But even now, I find it easier to say to my grandchildren that I love them rather than saying it to my children. I remember my eldest daughter, she'd get whatever, birthday cards or Christmas cards or whatever, but you could tell from the way it was read, the way you read it, that she'd really put her thought into expressing how she felt. Now, if they remember to send me one, I'm doing well.
But it's those words there, I mean, to a person, I think, to a man on Friday night, we all expressed something similar to what you just said there, which was that slight awkwardness with saying those words to loved ones. I mean, my sister, when she rings me now, and she's become very much the matriarch of the family, and she rings me to check I'm all right, sort of thing there, and she'll end it by saying, love you. And I'm thinking, well, what's she saying that for? She knows, I know you love me.
I told you 1922.
Yes, I love you. I don't have to say it.
The weird thing about I can't remember where I saw this, but this young lady was expressing that she told her mom she loved her. She loved her, and the mom says, "Thank you." She said, "Thank you."
That's like when you tell a woman you love them for the first time, and rather than responding with "I love you too," they say, "Oh, that's nice."
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
Yes, they're not getting the reproof. You know where you stand there.
Absolutely.
But don't you think it goes to something deeper? Because I know personally, it's like I struggled with the concept of accepting, like sort of like when somebody gives you a compliment, to like, how do you reply a compliment? Like if somebody said, I'm proud of you. What am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to say? But that's the thing. I think because we never had a lot of things being said, or we were not around an environment where people were very liberal with their affirmations and
but
their...
Isn't that interesting? Because we are such a oral... oral community.
Yeah.
Our stories are passed down orally, our experiences.
But they're storytelling.
Yes.
You emphasise it. I mean, beautiful storytelling.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
I mean, I don't think, from my experience, or maybe I'm just biased, I just think we are beautiful storytellers.
Very much so.
No, we are.
And there's a lyricism about it as well. But
Donald, if you think about that in everything, there is a lyricism to preaching. There's a lyricism to having, when guys are sat around talking and just roasting each other. The lyrics are just.
Yes.
We are a very lyrical people.
Yes.
But then what I say it is like, we are able to dish it.
Yeah.
But we are never really that find it easy, to be even introspective.
Yeah.
But even in our introspection, I mean, I think for me it's a thing I have learned later in life to be able to. I remember hearing Snoop Dogg saying, "At last, I would like to thank me." He says, But then when he was asked to explain, that he says, I am the one who has to get up in the morning and do the work. So I am thanking me for at least being able to wake up and do what needs to be done. How many of us think when we even, as much as pat our chest, we feel, humility. And then sometimes, it's as if we were taught this idea of this false sense of humility where at any cost, even though I feel proud of the work I have done, I have to play it down to a point that I don't give a sense that I'm too proud. Because otherwise, you either do that or people they'll pull you up and say, that guy is always too full of himself.
Do you think that not plays into, but is a part of that vulnerability? Because even to accept praise, to accept affirmation there, you're giving something, aren't you, of yourself there. There's the acknowledgement that I actually do value what you say. It makes me feel, it adds value to me as a person.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm going to shield that a little bit there. And that notion then of vulnerability, which I think is actually one of the key issues for us all, is to show vulnerability can only be associated with weakness. Not that it is, and nor should be that way. But actually, if I start to share with you an aspect of myself, an aspect of my life there, which I feel maybe not too sure about, or I'm worried about, or I'm anxious about, or anything you want to say, how do I feel you will hear me? How will you judge me? How will you feel about me? And maybe that's just therefore a little bit about maybe my self-esteem isn't that as strong as it is.
I think there's two things that spring to my mind with that, Donald. I think that certainly in the last 4 or 5 years, there are a number of organisations, leaders of organisations, I have to say predominantly white-led organisations, who have talked about how much SACHMA as an organisation has grown and developed over this intervening period, and how proud we ought to be. And I struggle to hear it. I don't know what to say. I kind of move from one foot to the other. Might say thank you rather uncomfortably and think we should stop now. But also in my own head, I'm careful because I'm thinking, the brown stuff could hit the fan anytime now. This could all go belly up. What am I doing? And I remember there was a period of about 6 months ago, and as you're nearing the end of the financial year, and stuff is coming, and it was keeping me awake at night because people who I need you to give me this money that you promised so I can continue the monthly wages bill, and I began to feel like this is all going to go belly up very publicly, very soon unless something changes. And so I feel that I've hesitated in being too celebratory about what the organisation has achieved.
Don't you think there's, there you are, leading on a black-led organisation, and it's probably a similar experience for other people in different sort of settings, that there's a bind there in the sense that actually you're not just a person, a man who's in this position. You are representing something, even no matter how much you want to say you're not. I will say to myself, I'm not, the days when, you hear about a killing in Nottingham, etc. there, and it happens to be a black male, I'm not going to get myself too down about that. This happens to be a man who's not well, who's this, that, and the other, etc. there. He is not representative of the black community. I can rationalise it like that until it's my own personal situation.
Right. Absolutely.
And then you feel that real burden on you as well there, that you know that actually if it did go belly up, that actually there's a lot of people out there going to say, well, I told you so. That's how it stays.
But coming to your point, you many of us, coming from Zimbabwe, it's like, I remember a while in the earlier days, 90s, a lot of guys or sisters will never say they were from Zimbabwe. They will say, I'm from South Africa.
Okay.
Because of the embarrassment of what was happening in Zimbabwe, right? Or at least the perceived embarrassment. But that's the thing. But then later, I've been thinking about this thing that I think many of us, when we leave the spaces where we are from, there is that sense of we are ambassadors of the race, of the skin which we wear.
It's too much.
But that's the thing. I think there's some unspoken realizations pertaining to us as a people, because we are a collective people. You will never see a man of my hue just going off and say, I'm going to Iceland to go live on my own and be a hermit, because we are a very social people also. Yeah. We do well where others who look like us are.
I remember in my dance hall days, and you'd be in Sadaka or the Everyone Centre or Broome Spring Centre, where having a good dance, and there'd be some lone white guy coming drunk as a skunk. I always remember one, and he was in the middle of the dance floor in Sadaka with his pint on his head, dancing away. And I remember us guys, even then, and this was like the 90s, us guys saying, we would never go to the club on the Manor with a lone black guy, and if you did, you certainly wouldn't be in the middle of the dance floor.
You stay at the edge on the bar. I've been trying to be protected. You never know what's going to happen. I don't want to be visible.
Of course.
I do not want to be visible.
But even in our own spaces, sometimes there's I guess that's why, usually our dances, the lights are off.
It's dark as it can be.
Darker than it. I think we always want to kind of stay in the background, because I think historically, for those of us who were students, when slavery there was always the one who was in the master's house and the one in the field. So many of us, there is that sense of, let me stay back in the background, let me do my work, and let me not even shout about the work I am doing, just in case later in life people will pull me up on the very thing that I say.
I have a sermon that I've talking about the Timothy, and Timothy being a young pastor. And I'm at the end of the sermon, I'm talking about my experience, and I'm saying I'm not bragging, I'm testifying. When I talk of the fact that I'm a happy black man. My marriage didn't work out, but I'm not broken. I've got 3 beautiful daughters, 5 lovely grandchildren. I get to lead an organisation. But all the way it's punctuated through, I'm not bragging, I'm testifying, because I think there's this hesitation that you can be seen as boastful.
I think that's that word boasting. You don't want to be a boaster.
Absolutely.
That very point there about, you say testify, we're all around the same age, and,
I am young. I am.
You're younger. You're younger. You're a younger man.
I am younger than you guys.
I think I'm the oldest here. As a 63-year-old. As a 63-year-old.
We have the same experience,
and as you say, which is, married, divorced. But life has many stresses to it and many pressures. I mean, I always remember my dad used to always be saying, pressure, 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 pressure. And I used to wonder, why does this man keep going on about pressure, pressure? Come here, But that is life. Is that how you manage it? Today we would use that phrase about resilience. But what do you have in your tank, nearly, or in your armory, to help you along the way with the pressure? So I've got 2 children. I've got a daughter who's 35 with 3 children under 5 and a son who's 31. And it's like life is really starting. They're in the thick of it. But my daughter's in the thick of it there, where there's a lot happening all the time there. And that's life. And there'd be lots of ups and there'd be downs as well. But like yourself, David, I'm a happy black man. I'm a happy man. And probably the keynote for it is that for me personally, when I had children, and one thing I wanted and was not to be in the situation which Paul Ince's dad was. Paul Ince's dad, when he becomes famous at Manchester United in the 90s, gets in contact with Paul Ince, and Paul Ince says, I don't want to know you. And that was the thing I didn't want to be ever. That when I became, the age I am now, my children were big grown adults. If they didn't want to see me and know me, that would be the... So when you have time like you had with your grandchild on the steps there, those are beautiful moments where you think to yourself, well, actually, for me, it would be, along the way, I've done some good things. And along the way, I've tried to be as good as I can be. And
I have a friend. I think he is a friend. We don't know him well. He lives in Wolverhampton. He's also a pastor, and he shared with us. We had a men's conference before the pandemic, and he had been living galleys rather like myself.
And no, I heard that one from my galley cinema.
I didn't spit on my own doorstep though. But what he did when he made life changes and became a person of faith, he had the opportunity to go back and talk to some of the women that he had not treated well. And that really stuck with me, because when I look back, there have been women in my life that I have not treated well. And I had the opportunity to go back and say to some of those women, I'm sorry, I didn't treat you as well as I should have done. And I always remember Dave Henry, the late Dave Henry. He was the first manager at SACHMA. And he used to say this thing about mental health in our community, and he said we ought to be madder than we are.
Yes,
because we have so many faces. It's no wonder schizophrenia is what they point at, because we're one thing at home, we're one thing at church, we're one thing. And I think as I've got older, and I don't compartmentalize my life now, it's easy being the same person at home, at church, at work, or wherever. This is new for me.
I think that's a very powerful statement, because people talk now about sort of like code switching in terms of language, but code switching in terms of who you are. That is a real splinter, isn't it? How do you make sense of that? I mean, you can make sense of it if you just if you say to yourself, okay, then these are different facets of myself, but it's must be much easier just to be, this is me. This is me. And sometimes it might be having to say, this me, which you see, which is me, you might not like.
That's it. No, that's
absolutely.
True. That's true.
You might not like. I cannot please everybody.
And the thing is, like, sometimes it's that version of you who you know. Because this is the thing. I constantly talk to people about knowing thyself. I think many of us, we will study everything else except us.
You're right. You know, I remember I've had three bouts. I don't know what you call them. Sessions of counselling. I came from a space. My younger sister. Before she became unwell, she was very into counselling. She did work for the Terence Higgins Trust when she was in London. She's done all kinds of things around counselling and therapy. And I used to poke fun at her. I used to call her a tree hugger and all kinds of things and denigrate her skill. But then when I needed to seek out therapy, going through a really difficult period in life, I realised the value of it. And then as that period of life changed, I went back for more talking therapies to make sense of what had just happened. And I've just finished another series of counselling sessions. And I was saying to the counsellor Mel, you have to click with your counsellors, I'm sure you know. We click very, very well.
That's true.
And when I went back, I said, it's not that I'm unhappy, it's not that I'm lonely, but I feel off centre. And I need to be able to have that conversation with somebody to get my head on straight. And it wasn't that I was short of family or friends or whatever, but there is something very different about that therapeutic conversation it's. You know, like you said, we've known each other, 30 odd years? There's not much we can't talk about.
But that's the thing, bro. That's the thing. That's exactly it. That's exactly the fact that we can't as brothers. Because 32 years, that's family, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
There shouldn't be things off limit when you've had
know what I'm saying?
that duration.
No, that's what I mean.
But there is, because that's what you're saying about the talking therapy. And a future guest we'd like to have is Delroy Hall.
Yes,
he came to SACHMA and he did a session which he titled "Why Black Men Should See a Therapist."
A therapist, that's right.
You know, it was a beautiful sort of like talk he gave to us there, but was really raising that very point there. You don't have to wait until you're in a very bad place. You know, you didn't see it like that. And actually, that's one of the big things, isn't it? I mean, going back to an earlier point you made there, David, about, back in the day, 6 times more likely to be detained. Now it's 5 times. But there's also the other flip side to it, which is when you're feeling a bit off kilter, where do you go? When do you go? So, and you can have that with your physical health, you can have it with your mental health there. The earlier you can actually sort of like intervene, recognise something's not right, then the better. I mean, there's that advert at the moment about cancer. And you're watching it first and you see these people sitting around there, they're not feeling 100%. And then it comes and says, if you're not feeling... then go see your doctor.
They'll go see a doctor.
Which is, I think, it's a good advert in terms of getting people to do that early warning signs as such. But it's the same sort of thing, isn't it, with mental health there? Whatever means you've got to actually begin to articulate and to acknowledge, I'm not feeling 100%.
I think it's the normalization of certain conversations around how we feel. And actually, it's because we don't talk as much as we talk. You know what I'm saying? We don't talk about the things that are meaningful to us, the things that build us as either as human beings, let alone as black men or as men. Some of us, we shy away from those conversations because I think there's a sense of shame.
I think that you're right there. There is a sense of shame, and I think there is an issue about, we have talked about us as men and then as black men, or the other way around. And I think there is an issue about us normalising a conversation as black men. There's a guy I know that has gone, when Man Talk was started, he was quite involved in the start of Man Talk. And I don't think he's as involved now. But he would also go to other men's groups where it was predominantly white. And he said, so I was really interested to know how beneficial he found them. And he said, it's great. He can get on great with them. But he said there's something different when it's a group of black men. And he's not somebody who is steeped in the community or wanted to say things just to be right on. I really got the sense that he meant it. And I think this is a different conversation, the three of us as 3 black men, of a certain age you're having, years ago this would not have happened.
No,
It would not have happened. And I think you're right, that term normalising these conversations is so critical.
And I think with what you're saying there as well is really important, because that you said there about praise and acknowledging things, progress. I think it's of recent. I think it's been fantastic. The sort of the conversations, the way in which the people I know, black guys I know in this city, are trying to address these sorts of things. You know, address these conversations. And we were in the barbershop on Friday, and a white guy came in to get his hair cut, and he got into the conversation, and he said something about when he came to the barbershop 4 years earlier, and he was asked, "Oh, what are you getting your hair done for?" And it was because he was going to a funeral, and he was going to a funeral of his wife. But he said to me afterwards that there is nowhere where he has a conversation like he has at that barbershop.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, and this is something which that barbershop and many other barbershops do all the time, and which those men in that barbershop and many other black men elsewhere in the city are having conversations like that. Because it can't happen just, you know, in isolation.
No,
it's got to be happening as a part of something.
That's it.
You know, even if we don't know what the something is, it's part of something.
I think it's also there seems to be a realization that, you know, we've missed out on a lot, you know, as a community. And I think, you know, the very fact that the initial question is, when is the last time you had a good cry? You know what I'm saying? Some of us, we missed out on a lot because we already put a label on certain things, you know, that we will not do that because this is how it is. But I think many of us, we will not do the thing because of how it makes us feel. You know, like sometimes from a personal point of view, it's like that whole thing. Like sometimes you think, the moment I start crying, I won't stop.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I have held this thing in for so long that when I think that when I can't stop, how will I stop?
Is that an element of control then, that we need to have some control of ourselves? Because when you cry, you have lost control, haven't you? You know, and you're in that. You said about the double breathing and the shaking, etc. But maybe I'm just trying to think for myself. Am I just trying to keep control? Because if I have control, I've got some order. Because so much of life isn't about control.
But that's the thing. But then isn't it the fear? Isn't it it is our experience that we have been conditioned to just keep it all together to our detriment. And that's the thing. And you know, like sometimes when you are on your own and just you well up with tears and you bawl uncontrollably for a long while. You know what I'm saying? And eventually you stop.
Yes.
Because you have told yourself, you know, I gotta keep. I have to go out and do something.
But don't some some of the psychiatrists and psychotherapists say, even, you know, getting angry isn't a bad thing. It's what sort of anger you have, and you letting it out. You know, having that direct conversation with someone there, and you know, not regardless of, but recognizing that actually by saying a truth, saying something as you feel it, might not sort of like, it won't be currying favour. You don't, the person might not like it, but you're saying yourself as true as you can, and not doing it or suppressing that on a routine basis cannot be good for you.
It's not, but that's the thing.
Don't you think, in reality, we are just as likely to imbibe that macho nonsense about big boys don't cry, man up, all of that. No, we're just as likely to take it in, even though we're having this conversation now, and I've been really honest about how unhelpful that is to our well-being, to our mental well-being, to our physical well-being. to who we are as men,
bro.
But we've still swallowed it
because it's all around you.
Of course, it is.
Everywhere
Of course
you turn,
it is.
and everywhere you turn, and every image you see, and so many images you see, that's what you see.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I know from personal experience. I say this to my wife. I was regaling my wife about the experience I had in my interview. I broke down because this is the thing. And I was saying to her, like sometimes you hold it in, and only it takes is one thing to trigger you.
Yeah.
But then, I think many of us, the fear is for that thing to suddenly show its head in the mostly unlikely spaces, because we have never had time to tame this thing. You see what I'm saying? Like we're talking about control. We haven't had time to be familiar with the thing that is us. So when we suddenly exhibit something that's strange, or that's something we suppressed for so long that now suddenly we're having to deal with it, it takes a while. It becomes its own crisis. You know what I'm saying? And I think for me, it's like the whole question of like, when's the last time you cried for me? Is that thing, because then it takes us back to that space, to recognize that space and acknowledge it. Because for some of us, we won't even remember the last time we cried because we have castigated crying to that dark corner somewhere, and we won't revisit that space. You know what I'm saying? And I think when we are aware, then we also become aware of the things that make us who we are, and they trigger us, and we're able to deal with it.
Yeah, I can remember the last time I cried, and I can remember going through a phase of thinking, and I like the point you mentioned about control, Donald, because I know people often say to me, "Oh, you do a lot of funerals, you do so many funerals. How do you manage?" I'm in control. I have visited the family. I know what needs to happen for the day. I know what it is. But I remember when my mum died, one of the other ministers in our region, his wife died. And so we'd gone to the funeral in Doncaster a couple of, might have been a week and a half or so, a bit longer after my mum had passed. And because he had pastored the church, and out of respect, people made the effort to go and stuff. And I remember sitting there on the front row, and I didn't have anything to do in this funeral, and I lost it. And I mean, I not to the point where I was having to bawl and fall on the floor, but inside, I lost it. And I know, if I had been officiating in that funeral in any way, shape or form, I would not have shed a tear. Not a tear. And then the next time I cried was, so my mum died in the July of 2021. My dad died in the August of 2022. And so August 2023, my brother who died in 2010, his birthday is the 3rd of August. My mum died on the 30th of July. My dad died on the 6th of August. So that week, there were 3 big anniversaries. And I remember Sonia at work saying, "But you seem to be handling it worse this year than last year." And it dawned on me, I said, "Sonia, you're right." Because the previous year, we got to keep it together because my dad was still here.
Yes.
But now he's gone. And I was a mess.
Is that why you disappeared for a while? But that's the thing. For me, sometimes what kills me, bro, is the fact that we don't reach out. We don't. We don't reach out. All we see is like, oh yeah,
and I think sometimes
he's going on holiday.
And
you know what I'm saying? Because for me, I think that what worries me about us as a community, us as brothers, is the fact that we hear it afterwards. We are not part of the struggle. We are not there to say, you know what, there's no much I can do for you, but I'm here. You know what I'm saying? That whole thing of knowing that there are other people who wish you well.
Yeah.
Because people who don't wish you well will tell you.
You
know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
they'll tell you.
That thing about, last time you cried, which, I think is quite a good place to begin to wrap up as such. There's lots of I mean, I could go on for lots of different things I'd like to talk about and want to talk about in terms of crying and memories, which you've just evoked there, which, I've got things flashing back in my head at the moment. But the last time I cried is very, 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 very recently. And I was at home and I live on my own and I was watching Andy Oliver. And she's doing this program where she does these big feasts. Yes. She goes around the country, and she went to Bristol, and she goes to this guy, a black guy, again our age there, used to be in the army, and this guy, he's got this charity where he's basically housing homeless people for 6 weeks. And he's got this little village he's created of containers, and she's going to do this big feast, and she goes around the city getting people involved, etc. But it's an interaction with him, which is beautiful. She's so proud of him. Yeah. The pride she's got in this man, in what he's done and who he is. It is just like, and it's like, I don't know, the way I saw it was, this wasn't just a presenter to a guy. This was something else going on, that idea maybe of that she had gone out and said, we're going to have this guy. He's going to be Bristol for me. This is a black guy. I'm not going to be going on about it. She doesn't go on about it. No. She doesn't. But you just see it. Yeah. And I just thought it was beautiful to watch. And what he had done as well was beautiful as well. And I felt proud of him. That's what I felt. And I felt proud. And I cried with pride for that man. And for Andy Oliver as well, for such a beautiful program.
I'm always waterwork. I won't lie. I won't lie. It's like like sometimes I say to people, I'm always on the verge of waterworks. I'm not.
You want to pick some tissues there?
No, that's what I'm saying. No. I will not lie.
I would never have said that about you. Right?
No. Hey, bro, let me tell you, this is the thing. I think like sometimes people ask me, says, but you always smile. I'm like, yeah, it's either that or I'm balling. Or I'm balling. Because this is the thing. It's like, at the moment, I was saying to Don, my youngest is going to university in September. Wow. Already, I'm struggling, bro. It's only in April now. Yes. Think what will happen in September, bro. I'll be a mess. But that's the thing. I think for me, it's like, I think it's my, people talk about, I think I'm on the spectrum of something. But whatever it is, it's like, I feel deeply.
Yeah.
About a lot of things. Somehow it's like I find my place in other people's, kind of spaces and stuff, and that somehow as beautiful as it seems, it's hard. It's hard because sometimes it's like the first time I noticed I was the way I am. When I was younger, I'll be going around and you see a guy at the side of the street, obviously struggling. And suddenly I'll feel like myself welling up. So it's like something I've carried all over throughout my whole life. And so it's like now when it's things that are close to home, it hits different. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the things you feel for the world, now you have to deal with it with things at home. It's like life becomes this roller coaster of emotions, which sometimes it's like because they are unfamiliar, you're trying to deal with them and harness them and try and make something that's understandable. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I'm always on the verge, bro. I'm always on the verge,
Standing
man.
on the verge.
On the verge, man. Looking over, man.
A little bit of funkadelic there for you. Standing on the verge of getting on.
But to be honest, what I'm thankful for about this conversation is the fact that we are, I think for me, it's a beginning of something that has potential to benefit many, because it's like the ability to have a have candid conversations about how we process life. Because many of us, we don't hear.
We don't, and I certainly think that, not because it's us three, but I think the things that we've covered, to get this in some sort of edited form and out there as soon as possible, and as widely as possible, because no, we don't need to be emoting all over the place all the time, but to normalise this conversation, and for people of our age and our background, and to be talking as openly, as candidly, and it's not being in any way forced. The conversation has gone where the conversation has gone, and I think that will help a lot of people, and it will help us. Sharing around, going for counselling and all the rest of it. It's only recently that I've been confident enough to say that.
Oh well, I've kept it quiet. I was saying, I've had counselling in the past, and I would have it again. Sometimes I think I should have it now, because I think on the point of it's not when you're broken.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it, bro. Which
is important. But I just pick up a bit there about this conversation about mental health in its many different guises with regard to black men. We're here at the university, and one of the reasons why we're here at the university is because they very kindly have offered us the use of their studio. They are very keen to work with us on this project, and a part of that keenness is that they want us to be able to reach out to the black men within their community as well. And for me, I think that's a really important thing for us, because, look, for many black guys here, be they from abroad or from the UK, the pressure which they have to, they come with all the things they've had to do to get here. That in itself as a road is a much more fraught road than many people know and understand. They have the expectations of themselves, of their families, of their communities, all on them. And then they come here and they having to do all those things you said, David, about that sort of be different sorts of people to different audiences, and the pressure which they have with that. And in some cases, some people struggle with it, and they are, they break down. They break down.
It's as simple as that.
They break down at some point later on into their early mid-20s, whether they've got a job. And we've got experience at SACHMA with that. We know personally of people in those situations. We've got members of staff in the same situation again. So for me, it's an opportunity to work with the university to do a bit of that reaching out, and also at the same time, particularly for younger people as well. So that's why I hope for it. For yourself Lungani, what are you hoping for?
I think it's that exactly what you were saying. I think, especially for us, we came from the outside world to here. You suddenly find, even though we have families here, and we have an extensive network of people who we know, care and love us, there is nothing that we miss the spontaneity, that word. Spontaneity of being back home, because it's like I was saying to a friend this morning, is that I miss being able to pitch up at somebody's house unannounced. You know what I'm saying?
You used to be able to do it here. You can't do it
pitch up at somebody's house.
Children, what you let you know they're on the way.
I always wanted to have it. People will just turn up at my house and be in the house as it was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. People will just turn up. They just don't do it anymore.
No. We don't do that. And I think that's the thing that's probably missing from this current structure in which we sell. We have progressed. We talk about progress, and we're more sophisticated, and yet it seems like as a people we are further, kind of fragmented.
I think progression brings with it. It brings with it its rewards, and rewards can often lead to self-reliance. And so the structures in our community, the community organisations, the churches, all the rest of it, we don't actually need them in the way that we needed them 30 years ago. Because we can pretty much, in the main, we can pretty much manage on our own.
Or at least we think we can manage.
We think we can manage on our own. But I was going to go on to say that the way we needed them for the physical historically. I think we need our community organisations, our churches, where we find ourselves, our communities of interest, if you like. We need them, but I think for different reasons now. We need them more for our physical and mental well-being.
That's it.
We may not be as financially bereft as we were years ago, but we still have that need to come. We no, what's that say? No man is an island.
Yes.
No woman is an island. There's one of the older women at church, and she always says, "We're just lending each other time."
That's it, bro.
And it's
that's it.
we are. Yeah. We're not created, if you like. We don't function well in isolation. We can do it. I enjoy my own company. I have a good time on my own, but we're not built for isolation.
No, we're not. We're not. And I think maybe the conversation also is that we are better many. It doesn't necessarily mean as a monolithic community, it's just as a black community. I mean, many of us, we have families and friends, in other races, and it's about, I think it's about leveraging the networks and the connections that we are building and valuing each other as humans, at the basic level.
And I think for me, from a very personal level there, the conversation has been fantastic. To have the conversation, to be a part of the conversation. So the little bit I can contribute to, and we all want to feel like we contribute to something. The little bit I can contribute, if it is that you added a little bit more to the conversation within the community, and some people got involved who may not have got involved, then I think, I feel that's a bit of worth. So
no, it is
a bit of worth is good.
So on that note,
gentlemen, we've got a big thing though. What David said, we've got to get something out, haven't we?
We have. And we're going to turn it around quickly.
Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and never miss an episode. Until next time, keep those conversations going and the clippers buzzing.